Jordan just texted in. The Texans are trying to build a culture. You need veterans to do that. Brandin Cooks' value in that quest is more than a second or third. So, I mean, I don't disagree with Brandon's notion that the Texans are trying to build a culture. I mean, Jack Easterby's the CEO of culture for the Houston Texans, so you know how much that's needed and how much it's valued. I don't know if you necessarily need veterans to do that. You need people that are holdovers, that have been here in the past, that can carry that culture going forward into the future.
But they got to stay here, Jeremy. That's the key, too. In order to build a culture that works, you have to build it with guys that aren't going to be one-and-dones, that are veterans on the last leg of their career on a short-term deal. You have to build it with draft picks and younger players at a certain point. That's why I said we got to turn the corner.
Do you need the veteran, though, to build, to teach those dudes the culture?
Some at the right price, you still can, because there are veterans that we know that are out there that you bring in.
Danny Amendola, Rex Burkhead. But I mean, those guys are cheap and worth one-year deals.
They're also broken down, right?
But they're also not guys that you can trade for a third-round pick and now have actual real value.
But I'm saying, ideally, the one of the best finds last year was James Conner on the scrap heap, because James Conner cost you the same price as Phillip Lindsay, basically. And he had a monster year. At one point, he was leading the NFL in touchdowns. He was doing a ton in terms of good yards per carry and really doing a lot for the Arizona Cardinals. Those are the kind of guys that, with his background, too, what he's been through in his life. I believe he has military in his background as well, where he's a guy that's going to be a stand-up quality guy that when you put him in your locker room, you don't have to worry about him. He's going to be a guy that can teach the young and work with the veterans and the old, and he's going to bring everybody together. Other guys, not so much. We know that there are guys in locker rooms that are me guys and all about the paycheck and the exposure, and they're not going to – those are the guys you want to stay away from. If you're the Texans, it's not about spending the money. I'm all about spending the money, but if it is like the guys we're talking about, like a Vander Esch, because of the fact that you look at him and you go, he's the kind of guy that was drafted with a ton of potential in the first round, but he was dinged up. He had the neck injury. And the Cowboys got some other players along the way, and so he was kind of being phased out. If you bring him in and you get him at a good price, but you get him for a couple of years and you put him in a system that's conducive to him playing his best football, he could be a guy, because he's a stand-up guy in the locker room, that he's the kind of guy that you could build with, not around necessarily. Right. He can help you build.
He can help you try to continue that culture.
Hey guys, I want to tell you real quick about Fitz Roofing. I love the people at Fitz Roofing because they take care of Houstonians every step of the way. It starts with a free no obligation inspection. All you do is call them 832-521-3001. No matter what you need done, they come to you, tell you what they can do. They go back with the rest of their day. You want them to come back, you book them, and they do great customer service before, during, and after the sale. You can check out all the ways that they can help you at fitzroofing.com. But believe me, Fitz Roofing, making a difference one home at a time.
What I find kind of hilarious in this conversation about Brandin Cooks is the culture aspect of this conversation, because everybody has been mocking the Houston Texans culture for how long? And now all of a sudden culture is so important. How can you go from mocking the Texans culture, mocking Jack Easterby, and then being like, oh no, keep Brandin Cooks, he's a culture guy? What? How are you talking out of both sides of your mouth like that? And into the Jordan's text as well about Cook's value in that quest of building the culture and having veterans. Because I do think that there's value in that. I do think there's value of having veterans. I think there's value in a Rex Burkhead. I think there is value in a Danny Amendola. I do. But at what cost? At my cost, it's not a second or a third. I'm not building that culture if I can get a second or a third for that guy, because I'm going to trade that guy.
But when you say
even
cost too,
guy.
You're talking about what he's sitting there on the salary cap as too.
Right.
You're talking about over $10 million a year for a guy because he's a culture guy and he might be able to help you. You can get two of those guys for the same price.
See, I've ignored the salary cap side of this conversation because I'm not in a position where the Texans, I need them to spend bukus of money on free agents next season, but you're absolutely right. Brandin Cooks, the percentage of the salary cap he's taking for that culture, now you're trying to put a price on culture. Is it worth a second or a third round pick? I don't think so, because I think you can find a good culture guy for a 1 year, $1 million deal.
And it's a double win if you get the $11 million or $12 million off your books and you get a pick for a guy that has more value elsewhere than he has for you, no matter what you say culture. And let's not miss me on the whole culture thing with Brandin Cooks, because what you people forget when you're trying to build him up as a culture guy for a team that's trying to build up culture is this is the guy when Mark Ingram got traded that went out and went off the rails on Twitter and said it was a BS move and how ticked off he was. Then a couple days later, he tried to put a Band-Aid on it, and then everybody tried to sing Kumbaya and say, he's our culture guy, we want him around. Well, you know what? If he was such a culture guy, he wouldn't have done what he did in the first place, because culture guys that are dedicated and loyal to the franchise and the people that brought him here that want him to stay would never do that on social media. They might go down the hall and knock on Jack's door or knock on Nick's door and say, come on, guys, what are you doing to me here? Mark Ingram was the guy that I loved. I believe that he was a team guy, a guy we needed, and a culture guy. But you don't go on social media and you air it out with cuss words and you have everybody pointing a finger at the organization you're already pointing a finger at.
See, that I'm glad you brought up Mark Ingram, because let's just make the assumption that Mark Ingram and Brandin Cooks are the same value in what you get for culture. And this is a hard thing to quantify. It's hard to put a number on culture and a certain player's value to that culture. But if we just toss this around for a moment, if Mark Ingram and Brandin Cooks are bringing you the same value in building a culture for the Houston Texans, you traded one of them for a 7th-round draft pick, and now you're trying to tell me that you wouldn't trade another for a 2nd or a 3rd when you're trying to rebuild this roster completely?